the last time I was here for a full house, went home disappointed, so I'm glad to be here in a different environment. I'm normally here for hearings, CCC, CHC, DRA, so it's a different environment here today, so I'm glad to be here. And again, I suppose Damien has given me a very flattering welcome. I think I'm here to learn as much as anything else. No expert in any real area. Even when we talk about the topic of the me and we, people saying, what does that mean? It's a simple collaboration of the individual and how it becomes a collective force. And it's intangible, I suppose. Intangible, something that can't be measured. You know, I often hear Brian Cody talking about spirit. You often hear coaches talking about an unbreakable bond, the whole issue of family. Living that, I suppose, as opposed to just talking about it. You know, I think every coach has something in their head about values, principles, and we're all on the same page in that regard. It's also the fusion, I think, of ideas in terms of allowing a young guy to develop, but also being ruthless enough where necessary to achieve excellence. You know, so encouraging ambition as well as care. And I think sometimes they can run contradictorily, kind of beside each other. They can kind of, at times we're inclined to think that if a guy optimizes well-being, if we look after the person, develop the person, that you can't have success. And if you measure success by the 5 finals that Damien alluded to, we only won one of the finals. So if I was David Moyes, you'd be out on your ear, I suppose, after, you know, in the GAA terms, it's probably different. So it's about the journey as well, and the journey towards success. So I met someone outside from Mayo, and they said, we're very like yourselves in Waterford. We're nearly at the Holy Grail at times, and we don't get there. There's empathy between the two forces. So I'm here today to, as I said, as a learner as much as anything else, and I'm here not to espouse or be self-indulgent. I'm going to let you in with the players' permission to some of the things that we would have done over the 5 years. Again, not in a revealing way that kind of contradicts any kind of bond that we had. It's because the guys were open enough in terms of, and transparent enough in terms of how they dealt with things and how they lived, I suppose, as much as anything else. So, I've introduced myself. I'll just basically go through a number of headings: the environment for personal growth, how you create something, an environment, working together, even though you might be apart. And I'll use a few English analogies there. The whole idea of combining the me and we, room for the maverick or even the selfish and egotistical within a team environment, and how you create that, and the contradiction that might exist for some people. And you hear often people saying no egos in our dressing room. Everybody has an ego of some sort, and I'm interested in the study around the development of that. The key thing is the whole idea of balance and bringing it to real life, how you fuse the catalyst for performance, caring, relentless spirit, intangible drive, with an actual game plan and the execution of that. So I'll let you into a bit of that. And I just threw in a slither to make myself feel more comfortable, I suppose, more than anything else. Okay. So if you just have a listen to Morris's video, this is Morris referring, or after the 2015 semi-final of the championship against Cork. So just have a listen to this, and we'll come back to this at the end of the presentation.
Let's hear from Waterford. Let's hear from Maurice Shanahan talking with Claire.
Maurice, congratulations. You were under big pressure coming in today with the loss of Pádraig Mahoney, but you scored 1-9.
Look, Paddy's irreplaceable in our team. Pádraig Mahoney was us, and that's who we did it for today, you know. We saw something coming on that bus today, and it was Pádraig Mahoney to drive us, and he drove us today. It's for him.
Okay, so Morris is referring to something he saw on the bus. He's referring to the me and the we, concentrating on an individual, basing something, honing in on something as motivation ahead of a big game, and then I suppose being able to refer to it afterwards and being open enough to refer to it. As I said, we'll deal with it as we go on. Okay, so first of all, the most important thing for us when we talk about well-being, and well-being now, I'm a secondary school teacher for the last 20 years, and it's a hot topic now. They're rolling out, where we do it with the future leaders, they're rolling out another 200 hours in school next year, and for us, sport is a setting for the development of people physically and psychologically. Okay, we know that we have the advantage in that we're looking after people, and I think it's hugely important that we recognise the one good adult theory. Studies have shown that players, athletes, are more inclined to confide in coaches rather than parents, rather than friends. The relationship built up with coaches can ensure that common mental disorders can be picked up on better by coaches at times than parents, than teachers, than friends. I think that's hugely important. I went to school in St. Saviour's National School in Ballybeg, and I went to De La Salle College. I was the only primary school student to go to De La Salle College. And the brothers basically looked after me whilst I was in the college in De La Salle for 5 or 6 years. When I went to UCC, they fixed up a school for me in UCD to do my HDIP. I never did an interview for a job in my life. Whilst I was doing the HDIP in UCD in Benillis in Storgan, they rang me to say they had a job for me back in the school. So they were kind of my mentors, I suppose, in terms of the process towards what they give. And I think it's vitally important that in order to recognise and to become more, literate, I suppose, in the whole area of mental health, it's important that you have the skills in mental health literacy. Okay, and I read a very good dissertation by Clean O'Leary, who talks about the engagement and the spotting of mental health disorders within a sporting environment. It's well worth reading. And remember, we are moulded by the social pressures and constraints of what's around us. In Waterford over the 5 years, it's very difficult to keep things on the outside. Sometimes we need to be strong enough and single-minded enough to be not moulded, I feel like, by social pressures and constraints. Okay, now, that's by Robert Frost, not the ex-Munster Council chairman now, Robert Frost, the poet. Okay, so listen, I suppose the intangible I talked about is the idea that when I'm teaching this poem to 5th and 6th years, I talk about, even though I was born and reared in the heart of Ballybeg, I talk about living in the countryside. How everyone kind of waves at you in the country. They always give you they do that to you. They'll give you the kind of off the steering wheel, they give you the wave. And sometimes we kind of, on a universal level, we feel that we're a part in life. And in this poem, the speaker comes to a scene that's levelled, and he says, Jesus, we've no appreciation for anything in life. But a butterfly brings his attention to a tuft of flowers that has remained untouched. And he basically comes to the consensus that we're together in life. So at the beginning of the poem, you're talking about we're alone, but at the end of the poem, the conclusion is men work together, whether they work together or apart. And I think that type of maxim, if it can be inculcated into a group scenario where you feel alone, but you feel as an individual, but you're coming as part of the collective. And I think that was hugely important for our time in Waterford. How you do it? For me, you do it by example. You have to set the tone. Practically, that means turning up on time, being the last to go, being obsessive about something. The sustainability of obsession is debatable. Okay? Your language, your body language, I'll talk about that later, your honesty, your integrity, your inclusivity, your authenticity, and the whole idea of empathy. The big thing for me is recognizing the type of leader you want to become if you want to create a collective force willing to go to war, willing to go to, that's a bit of a hyperbole now in terms of going to war, but that's what it's like. It's like the trenches from whatever level. And I think recognizing uniqueness is the most important thing. That's the baseline principle from which everything is based on. You recognize that within a group, the dynamic can be different. Okay? The quality and actions of our honesty of our intent. If you're honest, you have the fallback. I think that's hugely important. Now, I did do an interview for the Waterford senior hurling manager's job 5-6 years ago, and ahead of it, Noel Connors asked me to read his dissertation on leadership within GAA management. Not alone did I read it, but I plagiarised it, if you want me to be honest, completely honest with you. But so I went into the county board for my interview, and I spoke about Goleman's leadership styles. And I spoke about the whole idea of being coercive where needed, so forceful, ruthless. The sustainability of coercion is questionable. Being authoritative, being affiliative, where you bring people with you, where you care, you have a harmony, you have a vision. Coaching, you show people how to do it. Democratic, you hand over power. For me, when I hear people saying, treat them all the same, one rule for everybody, apply that rule, I say, in my book, no way. I think you have to adapt to the situation that's in front of you. So I'm up here talking about well-being and known as a caring person. 4 years ago, I would be ashamed to say that after a parent-teacher meeting in De La Salle College, I rang Liam Lawler, I rang Jamie Nagle, I rang Ray Amari, and I say I gave them a combined total or time total of 3.5 minutes on the phone to tell them they won't be involved with Waterford. I didn't even have the gumption to meet them face to face. So you learn from mistakes as well. I think that's hugely important, because I wanted to go in a different direction. And here were guys that were giving their heart and soul to something. Richie Foley as well from Abbeyside. And I came out of a parent-teacher meeting. I went on the phone and I was just said, you're not involved next year. And it's not something that sits even comfortably with me now. So for me, it's just recognising the type of leader and the style. Look at the message being sent out there by me. Again, learning from the mistake. There's 12 minutes to go in the Munster final of 2016 here. 12 minutes to go. Okay, we're being hammered out the gap by Tipperary. Sorry, you know, we're being beaten comprehensively in Limerick. And the message, again, I've talked about the language, body language. You know, I know you're not going to be sitting back happy families when you're being hammered out the gate, but for me, it's just how you carry yourself is hugely important too. The most important thing for me in creating a collective, an individual and a collective, and combining is being real. And authenticity begins with being honest. When you're honest, your word becomes your world, your truest vision of yourself, and you do things with integrity. You're getting the job done. For me, integrity is when you get it done. You're just doing it, and you're focused on something the whole time. Also, the most important thing is when you're honest, and when you do it in integrity, it makes you more resilient. And for me, that provides a better performance. I'm not just talking about turning up outside in this pitch and performing well. I'm talking about generally, you know, in life. I'm talking about outside the field, looking after people, caring for people, challenging people. Not just, you know, as I said, caring all the time. The key one for me is empathy. Empathy for me dissolves alienation. It ensures that there's absolute inclusivity. So you're talking about everyone being involved in a group. Sometimes you see alienation in a club situation, you see it in a county situation, you see it within all environments. And bringing people with you by seeing things from their point of view, it's a hard skill. I'm not sure it can be taught. It can be taught, but I think it can be kind of learned by absolute practice, by repetition, by simulation of something. And I think it brings the feeling beyond. A feeling beyond. You know, there's something else at play here, and that's very hard to explain even in a presentation point of view. The key thing, the greatest maxim for me over my management has been To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, because I think it teaches you real courage, integrity, and as Atticus says, it enables you to see things from other people's point of view. That's how you create something. You have to stand in their shoes. You know, it was Mark Twain that said, when you find yourself on the side of the majority, all the time, pause and reflect and ask yourself, why? Why are you always saying that? You know, and I think it's important to be intellectually curious at times in terms of asking questions. We never had a set of rules with Waterford really over the 5 years I was involved. No drinking bans, no kind of stringent, strict rules. The one thing I would say is that we would try to encourage an attitude of confronting each other in a non-confrontational way, agreeing to disagree, being confidential where necessary, being open and transparent where necessary, and all those things. No gossip, hard to kind of manage that. But agreeing to disagree and a no-blame culture, all things that are part of the collaborative nature of combining the me and we. The other thing, the interesting thing that you might find interesting, I read a very good article in the Times, I'd say it's 4 or 5 weeks ago now, or 4 or 5 months ago, sorry. It was an article entitled, How the Selfish and Egotistical Can Become the Best Team Players. Okay? And there was a guy called Adam Grant, a psychologist, was referenced in it. And he talked about medical students in Canada. In first year, the medical students who share their notes with nobody. You know those guys over the years who tell you they're doing an exam, they didn't do any study, and when you go in there, the smoke coming out of their pen. You know those guys? Or the hands are up in the air and they'll share nothing with you. They performed the best, I suppose, in the first year in college. In the second year, the collaborators, those who taught more selflessly, more elements of altruism attached to what they did, they began to pass out the guys who shared nothing in first year. Nothing changed in terms of personalities. The only thing that changed was the program itself changed. So for us as coaches, it's important to create an environment where you recognize that an ego that everyone has can be channeled and there's a thing called ego. He talks about an egotistical collaborator. He also references the Canadian Caring Award. And it's awarded to the 20 best citizens of Canada in terms of their altruism or their humanitarian dignity, if you like, and what they've done. Okay? And interestingly enough, the 20 scored highest in the area of altruism and vocation, but they also scored highest in the area of self-interest. So for me, self-interest is a powerful engine for growth because it's ambition, it's challenging, working side by side. And I think it's Bill Gates that said, a hybrid engine where people look after or care for each other or care for others and are driven by self-interest is the best engine in terms of producing a collaborative approach. So when I hear people saying, no egos in this dressing room. I'm a little bit kind of saying to myself, no, hang on, there might be a couple of egos. They don't need to be kind of, they can manifest themselves within a collaborative environment. And I think that's steering a team towards that is difficult, and it's important as well. All those things make you more resilient. For me, resilience is when you bounce back from adversity or when you find the opportunity to thrive. There's a very good book, Ben Littleton's book called Edge, that talks about the ability to assess threats and opportunities and to allocate emotional responses accordingly. And he comes up in that book, I'm not going to do it today because it's a bit heavy, he comes up with an algorithm for how you become more resilient, an actual kind of formula towards dealing with it. So it's actually very practical, but it's probably worth having a read of. On a personal level, in terms of dealing with setbacks, creating the me and we, first of all, you have to grieve. It has to mean something to you. So you have to feel it, I'm reminded of Macbeth, where Macduff is encouraged to unite against the forces of tyranny. And he basically says, he finds out that his wife and his children have been murdered, and he says, I have to feel it first. So feel it, you have to feel it first. And I would have always gone through this process. Now, feeling it first for me could have been 3 days locked in, not putting on local radio, not putting on reading local papers, not reading anything. 2 or 3 days, just absolute kind of, Jesus, how did it all go so horribly wrong? But then when you come out of your slumber or your cave, as I used to call it, after 48 hours, you just follow the process. I've managed to go the whole presentation nearly without using the word process. I'm proud of it. I'm proud so far. That's the first mention of process, And listen, the reference to Shawshank is, I love movies. I love musical theatre, but I'm a big fan of the movies. I always found it a great quote where he always says salvation lies within. The answers usually are in self-analysis, where you actually look into your own gut, and then you can become more, you can consult, you can look for clarity, you can commit, you can channel something, and you become fearless. My son Fionn was doing something in 5th class 2 years ago, Rosa Parks, and I saw a quote from Rosa Parks where she said, once you make up your mind about something, this diminishes fear. So, for me, these are all things that unite and bring people with you as well. Hugely important. It's also important that the people with you realise, above you, with you, important that there's going to be setbacks along the way, the growth mindset. I think and that knowledge is shared and understood, and there's balance to it. And I'll talk more about balance, and a realisation that there's challenges for all of us. You've seen this before, the whole idea that within the Mercedes sign there, that's how you create it. Leadership being your culture, your strategy, your vision. Teamship being the actual specifics of coaching, psychology, nutrition, recovery, and your partnership with your board, with your sponsors, and inculcating and ensuring that's all integrated as one. And success happens, they say, in the middle of that zone. Again, I probably would have been guilty of not being a great delegator over the years, within the 5 years, especially when I started off. And then you grow into the job, and learning from those mistakes, I think, is hugely important. The other thing is a realization of where you're from, who you represent, and ensuring that that's part of the lad's makeup. And that's just a slide from my interview at Waterford. I just remember saying to the guys in the board, saying, listen, this is who we are. This is what we want to become. This is where we represent, where we're from. And just to show you a little clip, I suppose, of how we brought that forward on match day, we'll have a little 10-second or a 20-second snippet of some of the motivational videos that the guys would watch on the way to the matches. So just to show you, I suppose, how that was brought forward from an interview 5 years ago to actual match day. I think that's next. So you might just have a quick watch of this. Yep.
You want it, and you're going to go all out to have it. It's not going to be easy. When you want to change, it's not easy. If it were in fact easy, everybody would do it. But if you're serious, you'll go all out. I'm in control here. I'm not going to let this get me down. I'm not going to let this destroy me. I'm coming back. And I'll be stronger and better because of it. You have got to make a declaration that this is what you stand for.
Okay, and this is what you stand for is the most important thing. And I'll show you a bit more of that as we go through it. The key thing for me in any is balance. The balance between emotion and instruction. I remember the night before the All-Ireland semi-final in 2017, I would have given, you would have heard about Mickey Hart or other managers giving out notes before the match and, a little thing under the tape. So how do you kind of reinvent the wheel? And it really comes down to hard work and honesty, and we accept that. But I remember the week of the match, I would have, given the guys a note. And on one side of it, we had emotion, and on the other side, we had instruction. So I might have on one side, and we would go deep on the emotional part. Deep. I'm talking about guys who would have lost friends, or cousins, or, tragic situations, and I would mention them. Know them well enough to actually mention those. And then the other side of the card would be the instruction around, you were picking up Lahan, he scored 4 points, he scored right, and it'd be very, very technical, I suppose. And I suppose it's the fusion of emotion and instruction. Like if you just think back for a few minutes to Morris's, he's very highly emotional, getting the balance right. I remember talking about the difference between the semi-final and the All-Ireland in terms of dressing room. We were highly emotional based on Tig not being available for the semi-final. And it was a real kind of point of not anger. We felt an injustice. We were keeping it amongst ourselves in our dressing room. And we kind of created a dressing room situation where the buzz was just incredible. And we tried to do a similar thing in the final with Conor Gleeson, and we may have become more emotive. The fact that Galway blew us away the first 7 or 8 minutes was probably due to Galway's brilliance as much as an over-emotive dressing room. But sometimes when you look back and you're particular on your approach, you're kind of saying, how do you get it? How do you get there? How do you get it right? So the balance is hugely important. And that comes back to the leadership styles. When you're going to be more forceful, when you're going to be innovative, when you're going to be traditional. And I think that's hugely important. That's why, again, the poem Mending Wall by Robert Frost, it talks about 2 guys who meet at a wall once a year. One guy is called an old stone savage. He represents tradition. He represents traditional principles. He's not for changing. He keeps repeating the phrase during the poem, good fences make good neighbours. The guy on the other side is more innovative. He's evolving. He's changing. And for me, it's the merger of both. It's not you don't dismiss one side and say, he's just too traditional, he can't exist. Or you don't dismiss the guy on the other side who wants to evolve, who wants to change things. Management and coaching is the merging of traditional principles and ideas. You probably wanted it more complex for me today, and you come up and you get honesty, authenticity, hard work, empathy, leadership styles. But it's also the whole idea of evolving and creating that buzz that's, as I said, that's intangible. And it's a very good reference point, that poem, because it says in it, Frost is inclined to almost side with the innovator. And he says he moves in darkness, it seems to me. But the guys who move in darkness with traditional viewpoints have to be respected as well. I think that's hugely important. And it's around the debate around hurling, Gaelic football, all our sports, and how we deal with people, how we look after people. That balance, that you may have to deal with things differently. Now, this is just I said I'd just give you a brief snippet of a game plan, I suppose, and how you fuse what actually happens in terms of how you care for guys with the actual structure of team play as well. So I just said I'd give you a bit of insight. You're here to have, I would give normally a game plan out on the Tuesday night before a game, and I would have 5 years of game plans. Now, they're a lot longer than that, but I just want to show you the traditional principles upon which they were based. Pride, who we represent, love, relentless drive and ambition, collective spirit, leadership, refusal to give in, savagery, and then this was the one for the Cork 2017 semi-final, and I don't want to go deep into them. I don't think it's fair on the lads. So I just mentioned to them, these character traits have been instilled in you at home, the role at a home place. Character traits have seen you deal with personal tragedy, untimely loss of loved ones. All these things should provide perspective ahead of Sunday. And that's important. The manner in which you deal with kids looking for autographs, speak to Pat Carroll every night of training, blah, blah, that's the groundsman in Waterford. Our circle is one that can never be broke. Sunday we drive the performance for our circle, our people. So it sounds a bit corny maybe to some people, but it's what we believed in. It's what we believed in. And creating that is very, very special. It's a feeling beyond. And I think it's and you combine that with the structure. Now I'll move on from that one. That's not fair. Okay, no. You combine that with the structure of, don't read point 6 there, I have some example there, tactical fouling is absolutely vital during this shape. So I suppose, look, it's I can't be hypocritical either, I suppose. And for all those people out there that said we play with a sweeper in this match, you're actually wrong. But anyway, but I have no doubt there's plenty of them there out there. But look, that's just, the point I'm making is that how you get a team to develop from the catalyst for performance is the attitude, the Viktor Frankl attitude that the last of the human emotions or human freedoms is to choose your emotion in a situation or choose your attitude in any given situation. Last of the human freedoms. What's your attitude going to be? So what I'm saying is the fusion of the me and the we. Absolute, and this was shape 1 for first 12 minutes. Don't worry about the specifics of it. Don't worry about the specifics of the shape. You might be here. We're here today to talk about coaching for well-being. The point I'm making is that the catalyst for this to take place is still attitude. The tempo comes up to a pitch that allows this to happen almost naturally. It kind of happens naturally. Yeah, they want structure, and my opinion, players are sponges. They want this. Okay? For it to work, you have to know what you're talking about. If you're waffling, you're in trouble. You have to understand the importance of inclusivity and the dynamic. A guy might be on your panel, part of the club, that will make a brilliant administrator. He'll make a brilliant recognition of that early and inclusivity of those people, and don't have a disparity between how the board think, how you think, bringing people together and ensuring that nobody feels left out. And social scene is hugely important there, ensuring that guys are part of the whole thing. If you get a great idea by accident, sometimes I think it's important to go with it. That you get something which are good. You must align with all parties. And positive paranoia. Brother Stephen wrote a reference for me when I left De La Salle College in '94. He said I was intellectually curious. I went home to my mother. She said, that means you're paranoid, Derek. You're paranoid. You're always asking questions. What do you mean by that? And it's not just defensive in the hurling. It's more, what do you mean by that? And I think we have to ask questions. We have to. And positive paranoia is when you're able to see around corners. You're kind of saying you're perceptive, you're sharp enough to see something's about to happen, and you're willing to evolve, but not forgetting the traditional principles. And if there's any stalemate, you have to intervene. You have to intervene. If there's something that looks like it's not going to be solved, we leave it settle down. You got to get in there and sort it and take control of it. Okay? Now, when I just to bring that forward, I suppose, the night that Pádraig Fanning was going to be appointed the Waterford hurling manager, I left the Waterford WhatsApp group, and I sent him a much longer thing than this. But just to show you, I suppose, the level of relationship, I would have sent him, and I just would have exited the WhatsApp group, and I was just explaining my decision to exit the WhatsApp group. So I just said, when the appointment is confirmed tomorrow night, lads, I'll exit the WhatsApp group, not out of ignorance, more out of respect. I'll be there for you. I know it's a bit corny, people might see it as a bit, but it's real, like. You're my family, remember, I feel the plans, this is important, the plans are plans for life, as well as matches. That's the me and we, that's the level, in terms of the intangible. This was always my intention, and we did it together, and we just had a quote from Sun Tzu: treat your men as you would your beloved sons, and they will follow you into the deepest valley. Make no apologies for that, for saying that I love them as well. I make no apologies for it. Absolutely no apologies. In this day and age, people say, you might lack the rootlessness when there's a situation. I might be in a different situation where I deal with it completely different. You have to have the mindset to be able to change where necessary. I got this back from Tom Devine. And listen, Tom Devine is a doctor, qualified doctor now. I didn't do anything here without the permission of anybody. Tom, I got some lovely notes in the post. I said, Tom captures here the me and the we perfectly. Okay, so I asked for Tom's permission, and the text I got back, as I did from Pádraig Mahoney, was, if it helps someone or it sends out a positive message, I have no problem with it. So Tom sent that: Dear Derek, just a quick note to say thanks for everything you've done for all of us over the 5 years. This is the me and we. Aside from hurling, you were a key figure and a positive influence in the lives of 30 or so young men, myself included, in our transition from boys to young men. Tig has often said you're like a second father to him, and your values have had a strong influence on me as well. On the hurling side of things, the culture of continual self-improvement and professionalism you created will live on through the players, be the next manager good or bad. Waterford hurling as a whole, and the 30 odd of us and players owe you a huge debt of gratitude. If there's anything I can do for you, please get on to me. Yours in gratitude, Tom Devine. I might need him in cardiac care in the next few years, you never know. So that's why I'm giving him the heads up here. You never know. But listen, that looks very self-indulgent on my behalf. But the team today is optimizing well-being. Why do you care for people? That makes it easier for me to step away. Not to step away, but you step away. And like my mother would often say to me at home, she'd say, Jesus, are you stepping down? Yeah, I am, ma'am. And what if someone else comes in and wins the All-Ireland? What if someone else comes in directly contradicting what you've tried to create? But bringing the personal of what happens at home over the dinner, like you're discussing what's happening at home. What if someone else comes in? Just, ma'am, I'm okay with that. Like, you know, I've had a great relationship with the lads. You know, we'll move on. Life moves on. Of course, it's not hard to take, but you're looking at and you're kind of saying to yourself, Jesus, you know, how will I cope with it? And I miss it terribly, but that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes. The point there being the recognition that the players were mature enough and they grew, boys to men. It's hugely important. And we're overlooking the whole area of success, I suppose, measured by the self-fulfillment that comes with giving your best by combining the me and we. And finally, I suppose, two things to look at, I suppose, of a reading list after this. Morris referenced something at the start. He said, we watched the video on the bus that, for me, encapsulated what the me and we was. So Pádraig's video should be here before the 2015. Remember, Pádraig had broken his leg in a club match, so he missed out in the 2015, and this was played to the lads on the bus again. And again, it's balance, perhaps. And
it's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you.
Well, lads, look, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for the support you've given me over the last month. It's much appreciated. A month ago, I was never enjoying my hurling as much. That's what makes this team so special. Well, lads, look, first of all, I'd like to thank every one of you for the support you've given me over the last month. It's much appreciated. A month ago, I was never enjoying my hurling as much in my whole career, and I felt that I was coming to the top of my game. And I could not wait to get on that field today, lads, against Cork, because of the spirit, lads, that we have built up over the last number of months has become unbreakable. It's only when you get injuries like this that you realise and appreciate what it means to put on the Waterford jersey in games like today. And that's why, lads, I would like every one of you to enjoy today. But as we all know, you only enjoy it when you win. But what makes this team so special is that we enjoy hooking, the blocking, the tackling and making the turnovers, because that's the honest people that we are and that we are brought up to be. And what better place, lads, to do it than in Thurles today with our best friends and the people that you've grew up with all your lives. I'd also, lads, like every one of you, to think of a special group of people that are involved in this setup when you're running around to that field today, and that's our backroom team. The support that they give us, lads, at training and matches, and the work that they do. Anything that we've ever asked for, they're always doing it. And today, lads, we owe it to them to give them a Munster final to look forward to. Finally, lads, on ourselves. Hurling, lads, is our lives, we all know that. Every decision we make in our lives revolves around the game. So, lads, let's seize this opportunity today. At the start of the year, we set out with 12 games. We've 8 down. Come 5:30 today, lads, let's make sure that that's 9 with 3 to go, and we'll roll on a Munster final. Best of luck, lads.
From where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
Okay, I just recommend a reading list for any that are interested in reading and maybe looking for, I mentioned A Reference to Age by Ben Littleton, Legacy by James Carr, obviously The Pressure Principle, Black Box Thinking, To Kill a Mockingbird for me is the greatest manual in management needed. I'd like to thank you for your time and for your attention. I'll sum up by saying the fusion of the old-fashioned principles, honesty, hard work, authenticity, integrity, and the evolution, the innovation, the creativity, the fusion of those, and allowing individuals create an environment where they can collaborate in a better manner. And that's what we attempted to do. People may argue with success, without success, but it was certainly in the right spirit in terms of what we tried to do. And when you fall back on something in an honest fashion, you can live it yourself. So thanks for your attention. Thank you.